Exam ready. Hi everyone, welcome to GCP Exam Ready. This series is based on the Associate Cloud Engineering exam provided by Google Cloud. If you like the video, hit like and subscribe. Good luck. In this video, we'll look at the GCP fundamentals. So we'll be looking at projects, specifically their details and how to set one up, etc. Then we'll look at GCP roles, identities and service accounts, and we'll finish the video by looking at billing. There's three ways that we can use the GCP resources. The console, this is online, it's the online UI for GCP. We've seen this in screenshots before in previous videos. You can create and allocate resources using Cloud SDK as well. This is available for installation to use on your command line, either that's Linux, Windows or Mac. We also have Cloud Shell, which is a local Linux command line you can access from the GCP console. Let's remind ourselves of how GCP works. We've got one organization, one or more folders, and one or more projects in each folder. We can create policies at each level, but we can also create policies at the organizational level. These are literally set in stone. They can't be overridden, and there's no way around them unless they're changed at the organization level. These policies can vary. You can have policies that have to do with budgeting. You can also have policies that have to do with restriction to which storage resource you can and can't use. Once you have created an organization and set your policies, created your folders and projects, or just projects if you need to, then you can start using our GCP resources. Well, first you have to enable your APIs. You can do this either from the API section in the navigation bar, or you can do this when prompted. So if you're about to make a virtual machine, the console will let you know that you first need to enable the specific APIs for that resource. We can also use management tools from the console. And when we say management tools, we're referring to the ones we spoke about in the previous video. If you haven't seen it, check it out. And these are specifically to do with Stackdriver. So if you want to use the management tools, you first need to enable Stackdriver. You can create a workspace, and then off that workspace you can choose which management tools you want to use on your project. Now let's have a look at GCP roles, identities and service accounts. This is what the navigation bar looks like when you're looking at I am an admin. Again, I am an admin stands for Identity and Access Management and Admin. This is where you make roles, you assign them, and you give users specific access based on those roles. We'll have a look at this in a minute. So a role is a collection of permissions. When we want to give people, we call people in GCP identities, we can't just assign permissions to them. That will take too long because each person will require pretty much the same permissions if they're in similar roles. Let's say you have two data engineers that need permission to access, let's say we need cloud storage and we need access to compute engine, etc. You don't want to have to reassign the same permissions to people who are doing the same job. You can create a role, assign the permissions to the role, and then assign the role to the identities, aka the users. So we assign permissions to roles and roles to identities. Here's what our GCP role looks like. We've got three types of GCP roles. We have primitive, which splits into owner, editor and viewer. Then we have predefined and custom. Let's have a look at the easiest one. This is custom. This is where you add permissions to the roles and then assign those roles. This is best used for companies where the data engineers might be doing many different types of things if they're a small company, or if these employees, aka identities, have more than one responsibility in that team. You'd have a custom role and assign that role to all the identities who need it. We have predefined might give people more permissions than they actually need to carry out their job. We'll look at this in a minute. Then we have primitive, which is just owner, editor, and viewer. Primitive was there before these three types of GCP roles were created. So you'd have a project owner, a project editor, and a project viewer. And we'll look into these in more detail as we go along. Let's have a look at the principle of least privilege. This is a very important concept. There are many questions on it in the exam, and as somebody, in my exam alone, there were at least 2 questions on the principle of least privilege. The principle of least privilege says that you need to give people the minimum possible of permissions in order for them to do their job, not more and not less. If you give them less permissions than they need to do their job, then they can't get the job done. If you give them more permissions than they need to do the job, they might accidentally delete something or override something, or you will give them access to things that they don't necessarily have training in, etc. So when we are assigning roles to users, we need to make sure that we're assigning the roles that are fit for their job role. That's exactly why we have roles. If we have data engineers and data scientists, then we can assign the data engineering role to any identity with a data engineering title, and the same for data science. Next, let's have a look at service accounts. These are really important for GCP. So these are accounts which give users access to specific bits of resources, but not the full resource. So if you want to give access to a database, but not the direct access to the database in the sense that they can't change it and they can't alter it, they can't update it, they can't do anything to the actual database except use it, then you will assign a service account. Service accounts are a bit unusual. They can be treated as identities or resources. They're kind of both, depending on your scenario. So if you are looking at a situation where you want to assign a role to a service account, it becomes an identity because you're assigning a role to it. And we said previously, if you assign a role to a user, you're assigning a role to an identity. And if you want to treat a service account as a resource, then you have to give identities access to the service account, in which case the resource here is the service account. If that was a little bit confusing, let's take it a step back. We assign roles to identities. So if you want to treat a service account as an identity, you assign a role to it. Then we give those users or identities access to resources, whether that's compute engine or that's, app engine or whatever it is that you want to give the user access to. You assign that resource and you give them access. The same way works for a service account. If you want to treat it as a resource, you give the users access to that resource. Last on this video, the final thing on this video is billing accounts. Billing accounts also have roles. If you're working in a small team, then the billing might just be within that team. And if you're a startup, that might be the scenario where you just have an organization and your budget is the exact same for the organization because there's only one department, essentially. But if you're part of a bigger department or you're part of a department with multiple projects, then as we said, you might have many folders and many projects. So you need to have billing accounts. And you can have billing accounts per project, you can have billing accounts per folders, and you'll have a billing account for the organization itself. And therefore, if you're setting up a GCP account and you are about to start an organization, you'll have to have a billing account before you can begin using GCP. There's different types of roles when it comes to billing as well. We've got billing account creator, billing account admin, billing account user, and billing account viewer. The names are kind of self-explanatory. So the billing account creator can create new self-service billing accounts. That person is responsible for creating the billing account. Then we have billing account admin. This person manages the billing account, but he can't make them. Then we have billing account user. This person can enable other users to use the project and can link projects to billing accounts. Then you have billing account viewer, which enables a user to just see the costs and transactions, but not do anything else. So when we're looking at billing accounts, we have one billing account for one or more projects. Let's say you have a company, and within that company you have two departments. You might have HR and then you have IT. Your IT department might have a billing account, and so would your HR department, and therefore you can have either one billing account for all the projects under IT and one for all the projects under HR, or you might split that further where you have one billing account for IT and you have within that different billing accounts for each project. So if you have a project in IT that's working on your apps, that would be one billing account, one for your web development, one for your DevOps, etc. The good thing about billing on GCP is you can create alerts and budgets. So if your budget is 1,000 for that month, then you can set that as the maximum spend. You can also set alerts, which are generally preset for you to 50, 90 and 100%. And so GCP will alert you when you hit £500, etc. You can also change these percentages to what fits your department. So if you'd like it to be 25, 50 and 75, or any other numbers and percentages that suit your needs. For billing data, we can export it in two ways. You can export to a BigQuery database or a cloud storage file. For BigQuery, you'll definitely need to create a dataset first so that when you're exporting, you know which dataset you're going to add this data to. If it's cloud storage, you'll need to specify which bucket you want to add this file to. Thank you very much for tuning in for this video. Please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe, and if you have any questions, leave them below. Thank you.